Before we get into today's show, let me tell you about the latest deal from Mike Lindell, MyPillow. Once again, the big box stores have canceled their orders simply because they don't agree with Mike Lindell's politics. They don't like it because he supports President Trump. Well, he's going to pass that savings on to you. No more middleman. And boy, does he have some great deals on the Giza Dream sheets and the Percal bed sheets. Listen to this. Giza Dream queen size, normally $139.98. Your wholesale price, $69.99 when you use promo code Joey. King size, only $79.99. The Percal queen size, normally $89.98. Your wholesale price, $29.98 when you use promo code Joey. Just call 1-800-893-4059 or go to mypillow.com. Always use promo code Joey. Free shipping options available. This allotment's not going to last very long. When they're gone, they're gone. mypillow.com. Promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. Welcome in as we kick off another week. Appreciate you spending a few minutes of your Monday morning with me. No deal, says President Donald Trump after Iran sent over a multi-page proposal to end the war. Posting on Truth Social, the president said in all caps, totally unacceptable. We have the full breakdown of the latest for you in today's show. Meanwhile, Energy Secretary Chris Wright says he's avoiding predictions on where gas prices are headed as tensions continue to rise in the Iran conflict. And gas prices have soared, folks. Did you notice it over the weekend? Ohio gubernatorial hopeful Vivek Ramaswamy is calling for a major crackdown on Medicaid fraud in his state of Ohio after a probe allegedly uncovered millions of dollars in taxpayer funds being funneled to non-existent home health care companies. This is Minnesota all over again. And South Carolina Representative John McCravey joins us to talk about redistricting in South Carolina. It's going to be a big week in the state legislature and other issues in this final week of the South Carolina legislative session. It's a busy Breaking News Monday, so let's get started.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
President Donald Trump yesterday sharply dismissed Iran's multi-page proposal, signaling potential and continued deadlock in negotiations to try to end this war. Posting on Truth Social, the president said, "I've just read the response from Iran's so-called representatives. I don't like it. Totally unacceptable," in all caps, he says. According to the reports, Iran's response delivered through Pakistani mediators failed to address Washington's core demand for advanced commitments on, you guessed it, the future of its nuclear program and uranium reserves. It's what the entire war is all about, and they don't want to talk about it. The president also warned the country against playing games after Tehran refused to discuss its nuclear program. The president slammed the rogue Mideast country for delaying negotiations historically, ranting on his social platform. Iran has been playing games with the United States and the rest of the world for 47 years. Delay, 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 he wrote. And he's right. They evidently haven't figured out that you don't play games with President Donald Trump. He went on to write, for 47 years, the Iranians have been tapping us along, keeping us waiting, killing our people with their roadside bombs, destroying protests, and recently wiping out 42,000 innocent, unarmed protesters and laughing at our great again country. They will be laughing no longer, he said. So here's the story. Here's what happened over the weekend. Iran responded to President Trump by again saying it would refuse to negotiate on nuclear and missile programs for the time being. Instead, they tried to shift the focus to ending the fighting and a gradual reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. If the U.S. agrees to those terms, Tehran proposed that discussion on nuclear issues could be negotiated over the next 30 days. Now this is according to sources and who were working with the Wall Street Journal. This is what was reported throughout the weekend. Iran allegedly suggested it would be open to suspending its uranium enrichment for an undisclosed amount of time and transferring some of its atomic materials to a third country, according to the Wall Street Journal. But the moratorium would be less than the 20 years that the U.S. has proposed. For some reason, these folks think that they're in the position to negotiate this. The Islamic Republic, according to the reports, also sought assurances that it would get its uranium back if the U.S. fails to comply with its part of the agreement. The response came as U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Mike Waltz, said the dismantling of Iran's nuclear program is a very clear red line for President Trump. And the president has stated that Iran cannot be allowed to develop nuclear weapons, with the president vowing on Sunday to do whatever possible to confiscate the Islamic Republic nuclear materials. The nuclear potential of nuclear bombs is the core issue of this war. And how the so-called leaders of the Iranian Republic Guard haven't understood that yet, I don't know. President Trump told TV's Full Measure with Cheryl Atkinson in an interview that was aired yesterday. He said, we'll get that at some point. We have it surveilled. I did a thing called Space Force, and they're watching. Now, he's talking about, of course, the Iran's nuclear capability. Evidently, we know exactly where the uranium is. We know where these potential bombs are. And from some of the earlier reports of some of the initial attacks, a lot of it is buried in rubble. Now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu echoed and obviously agreed with President Trump's warning, saying the war in Iran cannot end while Tehran still has a working nuclear program. Mr. Netanyahu told CBS News' 60 Minutes, it's not over because there's still nuclear material, enriched uranium, and that has to be taken out of Iran. All that is still there, and there's work to be done, he said, noting that to get rid of the nuclear material, you go in and you take it out. And that's, I think, ultimately what Trump is going to demand, and the rest of the world for that matter, is that we're able, or somebody with our supervision and us to be able to verify that uranium is found and it's taken out of that country so that Iran can never get their hands on it for the next 20 years. That's the very minimum, I think, that will ever be agreed to. Now, it remains unclear what other concessions Iran might be demanding from the U.S. because we haven't seen, or at least I haven't seen, a full published report of their response. But the response came around the same time that the semi-official FARS new agency, which has close ties to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, published Tehran's vision for the region. In the 10-point plan allegedly laid out by the supreme leader, Khomeini, Iran called for the full withdrawal of American ships and bases from the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf. Iran touted the Strait, which oversees 20% of the world's oil transports, as we know, and the world has found out. A lot of people had never even thought about or heard about the Strait of Hormuz and how it affects the price at the pump until this conflict started a couple of months ago. And let me pause right here and say again, because I still don't completely understand what the Strait of Hormuz has to do with fuel prices right here in the U.S. If, in fact, we are not dependent on oil from that region as we have been told. The president has told us that we export oil, that we don't have to have their oil. But I got to say, I filled up my truck over the weekend, and honestly, I don't pay a lot of attention to the price at the pump. But it got my attention Saturday when I filled up my truck, and I realized I was paying over $4 a gallon. $4.26 to be exact, I think it was. And I'm just not getting it. Now, again, they're telling us And I had Senator Lindsey Graham on the show just last week. If you missed it, go back and listen. You can go back on my podcast and listen to the segment with Senator Graham. Senator Graham, like President Trump and a lot of others, said once this war in Iran concludes, we're going to see a very drastic drop in oil prices. Is it going to be that drastic, though? How quickly will it take it to come back down to where it's affordable? So back to the president, though. He also took the opportunity over the weekend to slam former President Barack Obama, accusing his former administration of allowing the Islamic Republic to thrive despite its open hostilities with the U.S. Trump wrote of Obama, he was not only good to them, he was great, actually going to their side, jettisoning Israel and all other allies and giving Iran a major and very powerful new lease on life. He claimed Iran hit pay dirt with Obama, with Tehran allegedly receiving hundreds of billions of dollars from the U.S. He said they had never seen money like this and never will again, adding that Iranian officials finally found the greatest sucker of them all in the form of a weak and stupid American president. He makes a good point, doesn't he? Text me, email me, joe@joeyhudson.com. There's a moment no one wants to talk about with weight loss. It's the moment it stops working. Joey Hudson here. The diet that worked before doesn't. The workouts don't hit the same. Even eating less stops moving the scale. That's not random. That's your body protecting itself. Because when your body thinks it's under stress, it slows your metabolism, holds on to fat, and fights you every step of the way. That's why quick fixes eventually fail. Even the popular GLP-1 shots, they suppress appetite, but they don't fix what caused the problem. At PhD Weight Loss, they focus on restoring your metabolism so your body stops fighting you. That's when the real change happens. And right now, when you call and mention Joey, you're going to get 2 weeks free, and they'll pay for the cost of your food. Just call 864-644-1900. Do it right now and get ready for the summer. That's 864-644-1900, or go to myphdweightloss.com, because the goal isn't to lose weight once. It's to never have to start over again. Call today and tell them Joey sent you. Boy, this past weekend was a busy one. A lot of breaking news, a lot of stories. Of course, you know, we talked about, we followed the stories on the rising gas prices tied to the growing conflict with Iran, to major political fights over redistricting and voting rights around the country, to new concerns over the hantavirus outbreak that's getting attention around the globe. And as usual, Washington and the politicians, the powers that be, were divided not just over policy, but over whether America is actually stronger today than it was just a few months ago. So let's walk through some of the biggest headlines that made news over the weekend, and we'll begin with energy and the economy. Energy Secretary Chris Wright says he's, quote, avoiding predictions on where gas prices are headed as tensions continue to rise in Iran. As I talked about just a few minutes ago, the price of fuel is just getting crazy. Crazier, I should say. It's been crazy. Now, that's probably, the Secretary Chris Wright's saying he's not going to make a prediction, is probably not the reassurance that we as Americans are hoping to hear as prices at the pump continue to climb. And let's be honest, every American family understands this connection. When instability hits the Middle East, Americans feel like it's almost immediately. It shows up at the gas station, at the grocery store, and eventually in every corner of the economy, because fuel, the rising price of fuel, makes other items more expensive as well. I've been doing some work around the house, getting ready for the Freedom Farm Fest coming up May the 30th. I hope that you are planning to join us at my little farm in Greer. We're going to open up the doors, invite you in. This is part of the 4th Congressional District Club and First Monday Club. And we have a number of already committed candidates for governor, agriculture secretary, the attorney general, a lot of local elections. It's going to be a fun day. Starts at 6:30, May 30th in Greer. If you're interested in tickets, it is a ticketed event, but very affordable. We're going to have some great food, an old-fashioned stump rally cookout. My buddy Mike Gallagher will be with us, and so we're going to have just a fun time, and you're going to have an opportunity to eat a hot dog, hamburger, talk to the candidates themselves, and we'll hear from them as well. So if you're interested in coming, you need a ticket, and they're going to be they're on sale now, just went on sale, and they'll go fast. So text me or email me. You can email me, joe@joeyhudson.com. I'll send you the information you need to get the tickets. You can also text me on the My Pillow message line. You can leave me a message as well. But 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639, 5639. Just text me your info. Tell me you want information on the tickets to Freedom Farm Fest, and I will be sure that you get that because I'd love to see you at Hudson Farm on May the 30th. Now, back to the breaking news, and we're talking about, of course, the rising price of fuel. I think I started this. I kind of digressed. I lost my train of thought. We were doing some work in the yard, just trying to freshen up mulch beds and that kind of thing. So I ordered a load of mulch. Typically, that load of mulch is just over $600. Guess what it cost me this time? $1,100. I didn't really think to ask them about the price, and never, because it's always cost me no more than just over $600 or so. They brought it out, dumped it, and handed me the the invoice for $1,100. And of course, they're talking about fuel prices and the price that the mulch has gone up. This is what we're dealing with, and we got to get a handle on this quickly because this is going to be a big factor, affordability, in the midterm elections. The Strait of Hormuz, of course, remains one of the biggest pressure points in the world economy right now. Roughly a fifth of the world's oil supply moves through that narrow waterway. Now former Florida Congressman and U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Mike Waltz, says the United States is pushing for a United Nations resolution condemning Iran's actions, restricting shipping traffic there. We've been talking about this for weeks. We got to take control of that somehow. We got to open that up if, in fact, that's what is causing our fuel prices to go up. And that's what they say. I mean, that request by the UN Ambassador Mike Waltz is significant because the administration is clearly trying to build international pressure on Iran instead of appearing to act alone. And the whole world's got to get behind this. But even with those diplomatic efforts, questions are growing about whether this conflict is accomplishing what it set out to accomplish. Is it making America safer, for example? And I was watching, and I forget which network this was on, but a retired Admiral, William McRaven, said this weekend that the United States is, quote, not really that much better off than before the war with Iran began. Now, that's a remarkable statement coming from someone with McRaven's national security background. But piling on to that was Democrat Senator Mark Kelly, who you expect of this, asking the question a lot of Americans are quietly asking themselves right now: what are the American people getting out of this war? And we're being told to be patient. Now, politically, Democrats are trying to frame this as a weakness for President Trump ahead of his upcoming meeting with the Chinese president. Senator Jack Reed claimed the president's entering those talks in a weakened position. But here's the bigger issue for the American people. Strength abroad isn't measured by press conferences or political spin, particularly political spin from the Democrats. It's measured by whether adversaries fear consequences from us, whether supply chains remain stable, whether American families can afford everyday life. That's what we're more interested in than anything else. That's the standard that voters care about. That's the standard that people will be thinking about as they're voting in these primaries this summer, and particularly as we go into the November general election. We don't care about any of the other stuff necessarily. We don't necessarily understand the diplomatic ties and the backroom deals that they're making in the UN. We care about what it costs when I go to fill up my Chevrolet Silverado pickup truck, and it stuns me how much it cost That's what we're all thinking about right now. And that's what's going to determine who wins these midterms. We focus quite a bit on the midterm elections in relationship to the U.S. House of Representatives getting control or a bigger majority for the Republicans and for President Trump in the U.S. House. And then, of course, the U.S. Senate as well, hanging on to that narrow majority that we have there as well. But there are a lot of key gubernatorial races around the country also. One, for example, is Ohio. And Ohio gubernatorial hopeful Vivek Ramaswamy, who came on the national political landscape in the 2024 GOP primary for president, is calling for a major crackdown on Medicaid fraud in his state of Ohio after a probe allegedly uncovered millions of dollars in taxpayer funds being funneled to non-existent home health care companies. Have you heard this story before? This is the same theme that we saw unfold in Minneapolis and throughout Minnesota. And we all said at the time, and we suspected, and officials said, this is probably happening in other states as well. Well, an investigation that a number of different organizations were involved with, the Daily Wire being one of them, found that 288 separate Ohio home health care companies with the same address. You get that? How are 288 home health care companies at the same address? And it gets even more interesting when you realize that some of these listed locations for the supposed businesses appeared to be run down and in some cases even abandoned, with no evidence whatsoever that any services were actually being provided. So back to Mr. Ramaswamy, who's running for governor. He won his Republican primary in Ohio. He appeared on Saturday in America on Fox News with host Kayleigh McEnany. And he said that if elected governor, he plans to take a deep dive into Medicaid spending in Ohio.
One of the core issues I'm running on is bringing fiscal sense to the way we run our state and really leading our state to the next level. And one of the areas we're going to have to take a deep, hard look at is the way the $40+ billion in state Medicaid dollars are being spent. I think the right answer is any instance of waste, fraud, abuse, any illegal instances of those deserve to be prosecuted. And we intend to investigate them aggressively, as well as to prosecute aggressively, to send a deterrent signal that our government is not a piggy bank, the taxpayer is not a piggy bank to be bilked. Now, I think at a bigger picture level, Kayleigh, we have to look at where this came from. These are downstream policies of an overgrown federal welfare state. That's a big problem. We as a country are going to have to deal with it. They're downstream of an open border crisis under Biden, where for years, millions and millions of people were crossing the southern border and finding their way to different parts of the country. We can't fix the past. We can fix the future. And one of the things that I intend to do is to just take a dispassionate look at this. It's not just responding to one news story or another as a game of whack-a-mole. The way I look at this is more of a broken windows theory, which means that if you have a broken window somewhere, it's a reminder that we have to take a systematic look at the whole thing. That's what we're going to do, save those dollars and put it back in the pockets of Ohioans where it belongs. And that, I hope, is going to serve as a positive model, not a reactionary model, a positive model for the rest of the country. And ultimately, the taxpayer deserves to be treated with the respect that every American citizen is owed.
Now, again, Mr. Ramaswamy, who's a billionaire, sounded the alarm after this recent Daily Wire report that alleged widespread fraud, again, reminiscent of what investigators found at dozens of purported child care businesses operating in Minneapolis earlier this year. Republican Governor Mike DeWine's office fired back at Ramaswamy's suggestion that social services fraud is happening unchecked in the state. In a statement to Fox News, DeWine's office claimed Ohio has, quote, extensive oversight mechanisms in place, including electronic visit verification for hourly care, required signed daily activity logs, conducting audits and surveys, performing background checks on providers, and reassessing medical needs regularly. Now, Mr. DeWine is a term-limited governor. He can't run for re-election again. He cited additional existing measures to root out would-be scammers, including internal agency efforts to fight waste, fraud, and abuse. Now, the big difference here, of course, compared to Minnesota, was you have a Democrat governor in Minnesota, and Mr. DeWine is a Republican in Ohio. But evidently, according to the Daily Wire, you got some of the same scams going on, and probably because and a lot of it goes back to the Somali community, even in Ohio. They learn their systems. They learn how to take advantage of the system. And they developed a model that apparently can be used in any state, even a Republican-controlled state. In a statement to Fox News, the Ohio Department of Medicaid acknowledged the concerns the article raised, particularly in Franklin County, they said it's been actively investigating these matters even before the report was published. So, yeah, they're on top of it. Don't worry. We got this, they say, after some light's been shown on it. In a statement, they said, upon initial review, some of the entities mentioned in the series are no longer Ohio Medicaid providers or have not billed Medicaid in several years. Some other providers are subject to ongoing investigation. So I guess the argument is, well, they're not doing this anymore. Well, what are you going to do about what they did before, though? Are you going to check to see if maybe they were doing this 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago? The Daily Wire, again, who's been at the forefront of the investigation, not only in Ohio but other states, says this fraud has led to companies getting rich off of the taxpayer.
It turns out that the new welfare queens aren't the people enrolled in poverty programs. They're the companies that get rich giving services. Yes. The combination of looser policies and then Somalis that push the limits has led to what I call the Free Butlers for Somalis program, where these people are getting paid to hang out with their own family members.
It's just crazy that this is being uncovered in another state. And it's my understanding that these groups like the Daily Wire and other organizations are looking at every single state. They're not going to leave any stone unturned, and they're predicting that this can show up probably in all 50 states. Mr. Ramaswamy chalked up the alleged rampant fraud as what he called downstream policies of open borders and an overgrown federal welfare state. He said that's a big problem. We can't fix the past, we can fix the future, and one of the things I intend to do is just take a dispassionate look at this. And that's what needs to happen. You got to go in every state. Here in my home state, in the Palmetto State, we got to take a look, and we have to look at this assuming that there is fraud. Because if it's happening in Minnesota, if it's happening in Ohio, and there are already reports of other states where similar activity is taking place, you got to believe that it's probably happening in my state of South Carolina. Wherever you might live, it's probably happening there too. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Furman Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Furman Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you can trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Furman Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Furman, Matthew Furman. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Furman Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Furman Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Furman Ford online at furmanford.com, furmanford.com. Representative John McCravey joins us today as the South Carolina General Assembly heads into its final week in this year's legislative session, from redistricting to education policy, budget, earmark spending. Lawmakers are making decisions right now that could impact South Carolina taxpayer, schools, political power for years to come. It's always a pleasure to have you on, Representative McCravy.
Well, same here, Joey. It's always a pleasure to come on your show and talk with you.
Well, I guess
appreciate you.
I guess the big news that came out of last week, with just about 5 weeks or so before South Carolina's primaries, you guys in the House voted 87-25 along party lines, pretty much, to add redistricting to a resolution that governs what the legislature can do after your regular session ends on Thursday. Give us the details.
Well, it's amazing what 1 week can do and how much can change in a week. So we had our Republican leadership absolutely saying no to redistricting all the way since last August. You know, I agree with Ralph Norman that we should be redistricting and doing all we can to help our national situation with our House of Representatives in Congress. And but the leadership has been saying no, and they said no over and over again until this week.
Yeah.
Last week, and suddenly, all of a sudden, a man named President Trump got involved, and you saw our House change its mind, and now all of a sudden, we are all about redistricting.
Yeah.
Now the Senate may not be on the same page yet. We'll have to see, but the early they didn't take up the sine die before they adjourned. So that's a little bit of a question mark there. They said they didn't have the map, but they had the map because we had the map.
Mm-hmm.
So we've already got a bill that has the map with it. I posted it on my Facebook. Anybody can see it. I'm sure it's been passed around everywhere, but it looks much more sane than the last map we had that was gerrymandered all over the place just so Representative Clyburn could have a seat. So this time, I think this map makes more sense. It's certainly more consolidated with regions instead of just going all over the state and winding everywhere. So President Trump has called the Senate. And we're going to see whether they agree with him or not. I hope they do, because we saw what happened to the Indiana senators that didn't agree with Donald Trump.
I'll tell you, if you're a state senator right now, you look at that. What was it? 5 out of 8 races that who won with President Trump's blessing. You got to have some second thoughts if you're thinking about not doing something the president wants, right?
That's correct. You know, these were people who were entrenched incumbents, and they just tossed them out. So the people elected Donald Trump. People who have elected Republicans expect us to stick with the party and do what's right so we can. And it's not just about Donald Trump. It's about the agenda of the Republican Party, trying to straighten out this nation, trying to make sure we're not overtaxed, trying to get the illegal immigrants that are criminals out of our nation, trying to help our economy, trying to have the tax cuts we need to have, trying to build up our military. The list goes on and on. But if the Democrats get in, you know, like I do, if the Democrats get a majority in the House, it's going to all be about impeaching Donald Trump.
Yeah.
You know, and we'll go through what we've been through many times before. It'll be a waste of time for 2 years that they will hold up a good agenda that's turning our country around. So it's very important. Even this one seat in South Carolina is important. We need to contribute to the majority in the House.
Yeah. So as it stands now then, and with me is Representative John McCravy from Greenwood, as it stands right now, as you guys head into the final days of this session, you're kind of waiting on the state Senate. Now, you mentioned a minute ago, and there's been reports that the Senate Majority Leader, Senator Massey, had received a phone call from the president. Have there been other phone calls, do you know of, that the president made?
You know, I have a strong suspicion that the key people received a phone call, if not the phone call that Massey got in their
delegation, at least the message from on high. So we need to Donald Trump and his
and his team wants us to be part of that team in South Carolina and to get on board. We don't need to let the Democrats win the midterms.
Yeah. Well, I suspect that they may have received a text or from someone with a screenshot of something that the president had posted about those 5 out of 8 in Indiana, just as a little reminder, a little nudge.
Yes,
well,
sir. I can guarantee that.
Yeah. Another big issue, Representative McCravy, legislative pay. Legislators, you guys will get a pay raise later this year after the House added the increase into the second draft, I believe I read, of the spending plan. This has been an issue that's sort of been back and forth. Talk with us about that.
Well, I understand why they want to raise the pay. We get paid $10,000 a year in salary and another $10,000 or so in expenses that we get reimbursed for, and then another $10,000 for per diem. It's not enough, obviously, to make a living.
Yeah.
But this was meant to be a part-time position. It was never meant. In South Carolina, our founders wanted people who were out there in the community that were a part of the community. They weren't professional politicians. So we don't have professional politicians. What we have are part-time politicians in South Carolina that are supposed to be representing the people. Well, look, I didn't get elected to go down there and raise my pay.
Yeah.
And I voted against the pay raise that was proposed in the House. I voted against that. Unfortunately, it passed. I will not vote to raise my pay according to the Senate. They both have different ideas. The Senate wants to raise the salary and do away with in-district expenses. The House seems to want to raise the in-district expenses. I'm not for any of that, and I don't think we should be voting for that. We should be going down there doing the people's business, not our own business. So I think it's a bad idea, especially in this time when we've got so much going on in our state. We got so many big issues we need to deal with.
Yeah.
So I personally voted against it. I do understand that people want to get, they're losing money by going down there. There's no question about that, but they did sign up for it. So they knew what they would get paid when they signed up,
Another thing that that was approved in this budget, earmarks. According to one report I saw, about $300 million in earmarks. Talk with us about what an earmark is and why there's been a lot of discussion about them.
Well, earmarks are pure politics, and so they're given out as favors to certain people. They're given out unfairly. I can name one legislator who got $16 million worth of earmarks in his district.
Wow.
So, and then I can name other legislators that got zero. So, and some that didn't ask for any. So it's an unfair system. And what needs to be done, Joey, is we need a certain amount. Look, I understand when you got a project in your area that needs help. If it's big, it ought to get in the budget, so it's transparent. I can name the Conestee Dam.
Right.
I didn't try to get that in as an earmark. We went through the proper process of going through the budget, and we got the new Conestee Dam done that way, and that's the way it should be done. But in my opinion, we should be giving out a certain amount. Look, everybody's got a project or two in their district that might need help. Somebody might need an extra car for the sheriff's department or body armor for the police or something special for the fire. That's legit. And rather than trying to go in there and lobby for what you want, why not just have a certain amount that goes equally to every district?
Yeah. And
that amount is given out by the legislative delegation in a fair way.
Right.
So, that's what I would advocate for, because I do think sometimes there's a reason for an earmark. But we got earmarks. We got a $3,500,000 earmark for a legislator to get an orangutan exhibit in a zoo. If we want to help the zoo, okay, put them in the budget and help them. But let's don't have one legislator getting $3.5 million for orangutans. I mean,
You're making this.
we
You're
never
making
got to
this up.
debate that.
That this is not true. You're making this up.
No, sir. This is true. This is absolutely true.
Oh wow.
And so that's just one example of the kind of money that we're wasting. And I don't necessarily say it's wasted. I mean, I like to go to see orangutans too, but I mean, is this what we want to be spending our money on when we need roads and bridges? You know? So I'm just, I'm kind of put out with the way things are done, but it's going to take a mass movement to change that.
Right.
And so, but we've got bad things in the budget too. I mean, we've got festivals that we're sponsoring and they go out and get drag shows. We've got the Arts Commission putting out LGBTQ exhibits or whatever they are.
Mm-hmm.
We've just got all kind of things going on that don't need to be funded when we need asphalt, when we need paving, when we need infrastructure in our state, and we need to relieve traffic problems that we have. I mean, come on, we're not even funding our school choice enough. We've got a lot of things that we need to fund in school choice, and they run out of funding immediately as soon as they put it out on their website. So, we've just got a lot of things like that are out there. We need to stop.
Yeah. Representative McCravy.
The sandbar, $32 million.
Oh, wow.
Sandbar in the lower part of the state.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That kind of thing is just a waste.
Yeah. Representative McCravy, it's always a pleasure, and I appreciate you kind of keeping us in the loop this session, as you always do, and we maybe we'll catch up in the next couple of weeks and sort of do an overall wrap-up and of what the final plans are, but always appreciate your time.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined my mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, join me on my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, comment, and subscribe. Just search for Joey Hudson. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes of your day with me. Do me a favor and forward this episode to a few friends. Just click on the share button and send to your contacts. We need to build an army of conservatives to win our country back, and we can do that by continuing to share the truth with our friends and family. Keep those comments coming via the Furman Ford text line 864-477-JOEY. Email to joey@joeyhudson.com, and I love your messages on the MyPillow message line. Again, that's 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Be sure and take advantage of the MyPillow special, just $14.88 on the standard MyPillows when you use promo code Joey. Order online at mypillow.com or call 800-893-4053. We're back again tomorrow and hope you'll plan to join us. Until then, remember, God's got this. He's still in control.